Greetings and salutations. This is Michael Govier from the First Day Podcast, and you are listening to Pop Goes Your World.
If you haven't already, subscribe on iTunes. And while you're there, please leave us a rating and review.
And now it's time for our feature presentation.
I'm Chris McBrien, and the pop culture from Generation X is everything to me.
And I'm Derek Myers, and I'm here to educate Chris on the great pop culture of today's generation.
Episode 314, Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, movie review. Chris McBrien along with Derek Myers, and this is Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations. Now, last time out, we talked all about the year 1999 in pop culture, so we decided to review a movie from that year. I suggested Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. And let me tell you, even the title's a mouthful. Oh my goodness. But to help us review this gem, Derek and I are joined by our old friend and regular guest, Greg Martin. Greg, it is very nice to have you back on the show again. Welcome back, my friend. They love
you. Thank you. As always, it's always a pleasure to be invited on. Even if we got to talk about the Phantom Menace, it's still a pleasure to be invited on.
This should be interesting, too, because you usually come on as our resident music expert. So having you review a Star Wars movie should be interesting. For sure. But before we get to the movie, Derek, you want to start us off? What pop culture have you been able to get around to since we last spoke, my friend?
Yeah, not as much as you'd think, given that I had a little time off to take vacation. But wouldn't you know it? When I was on vacation, I actually took a vacation from my consumable media as well. So that's probably a good thing in the long run. But no, while I was away, there was a crappy movie channel on, so I got to see a couple of slightly older movies. One of my personal favorites, sort of one of my guilty pleasures that we actually reviewed on this podcast way back when. I had a chance to watch Hot Tub Time Machine from 2010.
Yep.
Which I loved. I thought it was great. I laughed. I watched it again. Greg, you've seen this movie. What do you think of Hot Tub Time Machine?
It's fantastic. It's one of those ones, if it comes on, I'm screwed because I'm committed to watching till the very end.
That's exactly what happened. We turned it on. They were just getting into the hot tub, and I'm like, well, I know what I'm doing for the next 90 minutes. So yeah, no, it was a lot of fun to revisit this. So I had a chance to watch that, and then as I mentioned,
I would just like to point out it was on the crappy movie channel, as you said. Your words, not mine.
The channel could be crappy, but the movie was.
The movie was good. Yeah.
Yeah. So as I mentioned on a lot of recent shows. As I've been going through like Netflix and Amazon, it's really good. The algorithm's getting to know my taste. It's like, well, because you liked this, here's another movie you've never heard of. We think you might enjoy. And so it gave me one of these options this weekend. And I thought, okay, so the movie it just happened to also be from 2010. It's called Unthinkable. And it's got Samuel L. Jackson and Carrie-Anne Moss from The Matrix and Michael Sheen, who's recently been in Good Omens. It's sort of a thriller kind of character study piece where Michael Sheen's character is a terrorist who has set nuclear bombs in 3 cities in the U.S. And in the first 5 minutes of the movie, the FBI is called in. They've captured him. And the rest of the movie, they're interrogating him to try and find out where these bombs are. And Samuel L. Jackson's character is like the best interrogator they've got because he has no limits and answers to no form of law. And they basically give him a blank check to do whatever he needs to do to get information. And apparently he's got this dark history that we learn about through the course of the movie. So you think I almost thought at first it was just going to all take place in like 1 or 2 rooms, which it mostly does. But I actually thought it was really good. The performances were good. Like you really believed these characters, had these strong feelings about, crossing the line when it comes to like torturing versus, the greater good. And is it okay to hurt one person if it's going to save potentially millions of people? And when you've got good actors this kind of a story can really take on a life of its own. And I really enjoyed it. So I was glad the algorithm suggested it. It was called Unthinkable from 2010. I think it was on Netflix. I enjoyed it. I would say, probably like a B. So pretty good, like a B minus. And
I just want to jump in for a second, if I may, because you've mentioned a couple times now about how the algorithm is really getting to know you and getting to know your tastes. That's the algorithm on Netflix. You know what else does that? Pornhub.
I wouldn't know.
We noticed that you liked. So here's.
I don't get those sites where I live anymore. No, I'm just kidding.
Welcome to the show, Greg.
Thanks.
Greg's totally out of his element now.
Yeah. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Had a chance to watch a recent movie. It's called Saturday Night. It's about the first night of Saturday Night Live. It's
this is like the lead. It's like scripted with actors, but it's like the lead up to the first sketch or the first.
Yeah.
Oh man, how was it?
It takes place in real time. So
Yeah.
it's basically the movie runs about an hour and a half, and it's the 90-minute buildup to the start of the very first episode. So at the very beginning of the movie, it says like 10:02 p.m. and you're like, okay, well the show starts at 11:30, and this movie runs a little over 90 minutes. So we're gonna get right up to the point where the first episode starts, and it's written and directed by Reitman, the son. I can't.
Jason Reitman.
Thank you.
Yes.
And obviously, when in a movie where you've got performers playing real people, especially real people who are very famous,
Right.
There's always that thought as a fan of the original people. It's like, are they getting performers that just sort of look like them, or are they getting performers that can actually act in a way that you would believe they are the real people,
Like embody their spirit.
Yeah, I felt this movie sort of crossed the line a little bit. Like it sort of treaded that line pretty good. Some of the performers looked a lot more like the people they were portraying than others, but I felt like the actors and the actresses that were trying to embody these characters did it in a way that I really believe they were who they were for the most part. I thought the movie was great, but again, I'm a big fan of Saturday Night Live. I know a lot about the history of the show. I don't know as much about those early years, so that was part of my fascination with this movie. Was I wanted to learn a little more than I know, and I read a lot about the movie after I watched it, just to see like which parts were true, which parts were not. And again, to your point, it's scripted, but there was a lot of homework done to try and hit on like real things that were going on. Maybe they all didn't happen in the 90 minutes leading up to the show, but a lot of the things that they tried to portray in this movie are things that really happened maybe just before the first episode, or maybe during the first couple of weeks of the first of the show. So I really enjoyed it. But again, I'm a fan of Saturday Night Live, and the way that the movie is shot, it's like this sort of guerrilla style filmmaking where the camera is constantly moving as people are racing around the studio preparing to put on this live performance, and it could be a little jarring. And that's what when I read a lot of interviews, that was sort of the big criticism a lot of people had, was I wanted to like it, I wanted to enjoy it, but I just found that the camera moved so much I had a hard time like paying attention to what was going on. But I think that was a deliberate choice by the director, which I think actually worked really well to help sell what he was trying to sell. So that was my thought. I don't know, Chris or Greg, have either of you seen this one yet?
Yeah, I went to go see it in the theater, and I agree. Like it was pretty fast-paced, moving type of movie. Like it was like for 90 minutes you were kind of exhausted by the end of it.
Yes, yeah, that's exactly how I would describe it. Exhausting. Yeah,
it was awesome. But the thing is you were supposed to feel that way because it's supposed to give you that sense of how chaotic it is right before it goes on, and then as soon as it goes on, all of a sudden all that chaos and stress and anxiety and everything somehow, some way pays off. Like it ends up going smoothly, it ends up working. So you put up with 90 minutes of complete chaos and panic and stress and anxiety, but when 11:30 hits, all of a sudden everything's just seems to be smooth and in place and working the way it's supposed to work. I enjoyed it. I didn't think it was anything fantastic, but if you do enjoy Saturday Night Live, I know they're really promoting all that 50th anniversary stuff. They got that big show coming up on Sunday, like that 3-hour show Sunday night, because they don't have football on Sunday nights anymore. So they got to find a way to fill that 3-hour time slot. So I know Sunday night they got that big 3-hour thing, and so if you like Saturday Night Live, you would enjoy this feature. It's good. It's decent. It's not bad. I thought the choice of people they hired too to play the actors, they didn't go with any real big names. Like there was nobody that was like a mega star, and I think that really helped make it as well. I think the big star was the guy who played Milton Berle. His name escapes me, but he's in
J.K. Simmons.
J.K. Simmons, thank you. That is his name. Yeah.
But he's been in every Reitman movie from the very beginning. He calls him his good luck charm. And again, doesn't have a huge part, but he's perfect for it. And and Chris, I think you would enjoy it because I know how much
I
you
definitely want to watch
especially those early. It's Belushi obviously is part of the original cast, and I know how much you.
He's in the very first. So I'm assuming it leads right up to the first opening sketch, which was the Wolverine sketch.
Which they
with John Belushi and Michael O'Donoghue.
The Wolverines,
Yeah. That was like, oh my God.
I think you would enjoy it. It's showing here on Craven HBO. It dropped, I think, last week or the week before. If you've got those services, you can watch it as part of your regular lineup or on demand.
I'll do everything I can to make sure and watch that. I'll put it into my schedule. All right. I'll do that for you. But, Greg, what about you? You been able to take in any movies or music or TV shows recently?
Yeah. Well, I took in a movie. I took in some music, which is kind of out of my wheelhouse for music, but I still did it anyways. And then I've taken in a book. I listen to a lot of books now on my car rides with Spotify. So I listen to a lot of rock audio books kind of thing. And I listened to Geddy Lee's My Effin' Life, the lead singer of Rush. And his book was great. It really was. He narrates it himself. So when you're listening to it, you get it from his perspective. And I always find that when you hear the narrator of the book telling the story, especially like emotional parts or meaningful parts, it goes deeper because you can hear it in their voice and in their tone. Like especially when he talked about the whole situation with Neil Peart and the final tour and his final days and things like that. Like if somebody else was to read it, I don't think they would have the same emotional impact that you'd have if somebody else was reading it. But with it being Geddy Lee, it was really, really well done. And the one thing I was really surprised to find out is like I've always assumed Rush was like a really clean cut type of band, and then I found out they did a lot of drugs.
It was the 70s, my friend.
They were a rock band.
It was funny though. I had to reach out to my friend because he read it before me. He's like a huge Rush fanatic, and he read it before me. And because the first, no word of a lie, man, the first hour and 40 minutes of the book, I'd say, is Geddy Lee talking about how his mom and dad met in a concentration camp during World War II. And like, not that it wasn't an interesting story. Like it was, he tells a very interesting story, but you're not there to find out about life at a concentration camp. You want to hear about, Tom Sawyer and Working Man and, subdivisions and stuff. So if you can get through that first, heavy bit about the concentration camp and how his parents met, it's a really good book, especially for people like us who grew up here in the Toronto area, because there's a lot of talk about Massey Hall. There's a lot of talk about Chum Radio, of course, CFNY, the spirit of the radio, right? That big song that they have, that kind of stuff. So it was really good. I highly recommend it. If you're any way interested in Rush, it's really good. Like I know Derek's a big Rush guy.
Yeah, I just added it to my list here. It's 16 hours for the audiobook, so definitely gonna get my money's worth. I'm going to pick this up. Yeah, it was
16 hours. Yeah, it was long. Like it took me forever to get through it, but I only really got into Rush because, well, I can't say I really got into Rush. I listened a little more to Rush because Primus said Rush was such a big influence on their music, and I'm like, all right, I'm going to give it a shot. And then I realized, I'm like, you know what, man? Now that I listen to Rush, I hear Primus completely when I'm listening to Rush music. So if you have like a slight interest in Rush, then you'll really enjoy this book. I also went to the movies. I went to check out the Bob Dylan film, Complete Unknown with Timothy Chalamet, and I enjoyed it. It was really good. It doesn't get too far into Bob Dylan's life. It just basically talks about how he went from, being a folk singer to everybody hating him because he went electric and he kind of went political with his songs, and Then all of a sudden, they came to realize how many years later that, these songs that they were, booing him for and throwing garbage at him for playing, he ended up winning. He's the only musician to ever win a Nobel Prize. So, that's an impressive feat. And then I was thinking about that when I was writing it down. I think Derek and I both were taught by a Nobel Prize winner.
Who's that?
Did you ever take a class at the university with Dr. Kirsty Duncan?
Yes, I did.
Yeah. So Derek and I both were taught by a Nobel Prize winner in the field of science.
Wow.
That's pretty cool.
Good for her.
What was the course you took that she taught?
University of Windsor. She taught us, what's it called? Climatology, clouds, study of clouds, weather.
Very cool. As you know, I'm a college professor, but my students are not getting taught by a Nobel Prize winner, let me tell you, anytime soon, especially after the comments I made earlier. Okay, so I actually was able to get to something too. Remember, Derek, last time when we were talking about 1999, and I mentioned how I used to love watching the Drew Carey version of Whose Line Is It Anyway? Back then.
Oh, yes.
Well, recently I've rediscovered the show. Because it's on, I think, the CW or one of those channels. And the host now is Aisha Tyler. Have you seen this version of the show?
I have not.
So it's new. They're new episodes. And I actually really like it. It's really, really good. My wife and kids are actually watching it with me. And they're like, Dad, this show is pretty good. I'm like, yeah, I know. It's, And I've been able to go see Who's Live Anyway twice in the last couple of years. I went to see them in Hamilton and then again in Toronto last year. But I used to like this show back even when it was on British television with Clive Anderson. But it's been really nice to kind of start to watch it because I'm like, it's a bit of a nostalgic thing, but new, all wrapped in one. So anyway, that's what I've been doing lately. So again, still tied to old stuff in some way. But anyway, I also have this.
Here's your dad joke of the week.
I figured since we're doing, a Star Wars movie this week, that I should do a Star Wars joke. It's only appropriate, right?
Oh, boy. I better buckle up for this one.
All right, guys. Why didn't Luke Skywalker get married and have kids like his father? Because he was looking for love in Alderaan places.
Jeez. The Force is not with you, buddy.
See, Alderaan blew up. There was no one for him to date there. No.
Kelly Clarkson!
In your face, in the face.
Oh, got to be,
And we're going to do a police lineup.
Back yourself a pro. Let you get that gray matter back before you get TCB in, man.
The real money's in fart jokes.
Lego down and smack 'em, yak 'em.
Well, what do you expect? They're Canadian.
Why are you always in such a bloody rush, man?
But he has a
Yeah, looky here. I can dig some of that grease to chomp it on some butter, drag it through the gun.
Uncle
Ooh, I'm glad that's not me.
I hate to break it to you, lady, but you're sucking on my arm. And that was a nice compilation of one of the last times Greg joined us. So it's really nice.
Still makes me laugh.
Yeah. So anyway, Derek, last time that we were here on this show, we took a look at 1999, from a pop culture perspective. And we thought it'd be worthwhile to go back and maybe watch a few movies from that year. So it was over to me to get us started. And I went with Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So what I'd like to do is I just want to go around the room here and get your first impression. This is a twofold question. Okay, I want to get your first impression of the movie back in 1999 when you first saw it, and then also follow it up with your first impression today after 25 years. So we'll go around, just give a brief take, because we're going to get obviously into a deep dive with this movie in the next, hour or so. So Greg, I'm assuming you saw this movie in the theater when it came out. Would that be a correct assumption to make?
I saw the midnight showing. You know how they used to do the midnight showings, 12:01. Yep, I worked at Blockbuster with Derek, and they were showing the movie right across the street after we closed Blockbuster. I remember we had to get permission to try and get somebody to come in and help us close a bit early so we could get over there on time.
Nice. So what was your first impression, 1999, sitting in the theater watching this movie, and then give me your first impression watching it this week?
Biggest anticipation I can think of for a movie in my entire life at that point.
Fair.
And then wanting to walk out before the movie was over as it was probably one of the biggest disappointments in movies I've ever had in my life. I remember going home. I think I finally got home about 2:30 in the morning, and I was so angry and upset about how terrible it was. I stayed up till 5, just complaining about how stupid, how disappointed, how much I hated Jar Jar Binks. I just went on a tirade for about 2.5 hours before I finally went to bed. So it was terrible. And then my impression now in 2025, after watching it on the weekend again, I was like, it is just, I don't understand how George Lucas can be proud of what he put out. It's to quote Jay Sherman from The Critic, it stinks. there's just no getting around it. It is a terrible movie.
Before we get on to Derek, your take, you brought up something. You said you wanted to walk out of the movie theater. I have a question for you on a tangent. Have you ever walked out of a movie in your life?
Yeah.
What did you walk out of?
What was that Indiana Jones one?
The Crystal Skull?
The Crystal Skull. I walked out, and I'm normally not this guy, but I got so upset because I remember sitting with my girlfriend, and I'm like, is that a spaceship? I'm like, that's a spaceship. I'm like, I'm out of here. And she's like, what? I'm like, I'm out of here. I'm not watching this anymore. This is stupid. And I got up and walked out.
Wow.
And sat in the lobby and waited for her. And also Annie. When I was a young kid, we went to see Annie. I think I was 8 at the time. And I told my parents, I'm like, I can't take it anymore. I'm going to go wait.
Oh, wow. That was like that one with Eileen Quinn and like Albert Finney.
Carol Burnett.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember as a kid, I was like, I'm like, I can't take this anymore. Like it's too happy for me. It's too musical. It's annoying as hell. I'm leaving.
Wow.
And my dad was like, my dad totally got it too. He's like, no, I get it, man.
It's all good. Let's go home.
And
Derek.
this is back in the day before like cell phones or anything. I had nothing to keep me occupied. I just went and found a bench in the lobby and watched the world go by. And you know what? That was better.
So Derek, have you ever walked out of a movie?
Yeah, yes and no. So I used to do the Toronto International Film Festival every year, and I would see anywhere from 10 to 30 movies over the course of a week. And probably by my 5th or 6th year, I realized that that's a lot of movies. And I was giving up a lot of time to participate in the film experience. And I got to a point one year where I was just like, I think it was my 4th movie of the day. And I think I had a 5th movie later that day. And I'm like, this is just terrible. And I got up and left. And interesting side note, I got up and left and I bumped into Kevin Smith in the lobby.
Wow.
Because he was producing some indie film. And so
because it wasn't his movie you walked out of.
No, he wasn't expected to be there. Like, because he wasn't directing a movie or starring a movie, but he was producing and he was just there. He was having a cigarette just outside the theater. And I wasn't even seeing the movie he was there for. I just went for something else. And I was just like, oh my God. And I was like, oh, Kevin Smith. And I was just, I chatted with him for like 10 seconds, just like, hey man, big fan of your work. He's like, oh, thanks, man. And so I'm like, oh, well, I think I made the right choice there, leaving that movie. It was garbage. And then for the next few years when I went to the film festival, I was just like, you know what? I'm seeing so many movies. If you get a couple of crappers, you get a couple of crappers. And so, yeah, I got over that stigma of leaving the movie early pretty easily after that. I'm like, if a movie, I see a lot of movies. I can usually tell within a half an hour to 40 minutes if I'm going to like it. Like by then I know. I've already made up my mind. So probably walked out about 5 or 6 movies, but always like film festival movies. I've never walked out of like a major Hollywood theater blockbuster kind of movie. Even if it was garbage, I'm like, you know what? I pay my money. I'm going to stay.
I walked out of a movie once. Like when I was a little kid, like when I was like 10, 11 years old, I went to see like every movie that came out. And I remember going to see Raise the Titanic in 1981, and I got up and walked out. I hated it so much. That was the only movie I ever walked out of. But anyway, kind of a random film. So, Derek, what about you? The Phantom Menace, 1999 first impression versus 2025.
So I believe Greg and I saw it together. We were working at Blockbuster, and so we saw that midnight screening. I remember at the time thinking it was way longer than it needed to be. Like I remember looking at my watch probably about 90 minutes in, going like, is this almost over? Because I think the movie runs about 2 hours and 15. And so I remember that was part of my first impression was, man, this movie's long. And usually when I'm thinking that, it's because I'm not enjoying it. Because I've seen some long movies, like Heat's a good example. That movie's almost 3 hours long. And I remember when it ended, I went, that's it? there's no more. And then my buddy's like, this movie's 3 hours, dude. Like, what do you mean there's no more? But yeah, I remember thinking it was really long. I remember wanting to like it, right? You wanted to find anything and everything in this movie that you could grasp onto to say, this is why this movie was great. And I couldn't use the word great. I was like, oh, I liked it. It had its ups and downs, and you just tried to forgive some of it because, like Greg said, the anticipation after 20 years, like this is the first time you had what now is more commonly called like a legacy sequel. It's like, hey, it's 20 or 25 years later. Let's revisit your favorite childhood nostalgic memories and try and cash in on them. And it was interesting to see some of the special effects work, which at the time, some of it was like revolutionary. It's like, hey, this is the first time we've seen stuff like this. But like a couple of years later, we get Lord of the Rings, and I remember one of my buddies even said he saw a sneak preview of the Lord of the Rings before any of the rest of us, and when he came back and he said to us, after seeing Lord of the Rings, George Lucas should be ashamed of himself for putting out Star Wars Phantom Menace because his special effects could have been that much better, and we were only talking like a year later. But yeah, it was. I want to say in the moment I convinced myself that I liked it and I was trying to find anything good that I could about it. But yeah, then when I saw the next one, I'm like, hey, by comparison, episode 1 was amazing because episode 2 really sucked.
What about when you watch it this week?
I hadn't seen it in its entirety, start to finish, in one sitting in probably 15 or 20 years. Again, I tried to go in with a very open mind. I think I had a lot of the same criticisms. I thought it was way too long. And again, we'll talk about some of the ups and downs, but sure. This movie had a lot of stuff in there that I just felt really dragged it down. It hurt the story. It hurt the character development. I thought some of the performances were not that good. Again, I did find some things in it that I really did like, but not nearly enough to say this was a good movie. So no, I don't think my opinion changed much after all this time, even with some distance and even with a lot of other bad Star Wars movies that have come since this one. To me, it's like just this is the first in what would eventually became a whole bunch of crappy Star Wars sequels.
Mm-hmm. So my initial take began when I saw the trailer. And my first thought was watching the trailer, I was like, this doesn't look like Star Wars, you know? And then I went to the movie theater to see it. And, you know, I think my initial gut feeling started to take shape during the opening crawl. And as soon as it started with all this stuff about trade wars, I think like most people, I was like, what? And then the movie got started, and I distinctly remember the exact moment when they were swimming down into the underwater city. It's like 13 minutes into the movie. I was like, uh-oh, this movie totally sucks. So that was my impression of the film. And in 2025, this week, I'll be honest with you. I mean, let's be honest. I'm a bit of an old crank. You know, that's my thing.
No,
no, it's true. Yeah, true. Yeah, it is. It's true. But I tell you what, I went into this viewing with a totally open mind. And in fact, I would even go so far as to say I was actually rooting for this movie. I was really hoping I was just too judgmental that first time around and that I'd come around this time. I didn't. So, yeah, the same as you guys, nothing really changed for me over 25 years. But if we go back to 1999, like obviously it was a huge box office success. We went over this the last time, Derek. It was the number one film at the box office. $430 million it took in. It beat out The Sixth Sense, Austin Powers, The Spy Who Shagged Me, Toy Story 2, and The Matrix. It was like by far and away the number one film. So I think let's start out with the plot of the film. Because, like, again, trade routes and taxation, like, no. Like, for me, if it's going to be called The Phantom Menace, it should be about The Phantom Menace, you know? And I think that's actually a good question to start with. What exactly is the Phantom Menace? Like, to me, it should be about a kid that's about to become the embodiment of the dark side of the Force. He's going to turn into Darth Vader. You know, like, what is it about? Is it about that or the Empire starting to take shape? Or like I don't know. Greg, what's your take? What the hell does the Phantom Menace even mean?
I got to be honest with you. I don't know.
And isn't that the initial flaw of the film then?
I think it is. I guess if I got to take a wild stab, I guess it's got to be, who is the emperor? You know, who's this Palpatine individual? We didn't know at the time, kind of thing. Like we knew, but you know what I mean. Like if you're going back, starting with episode 1, we wouldn't have known. But again, I'm with you on this. I think one of the big reasons this movie just flopped was just a very boring, unenthusiastic storyline. One of the big things that, as a kid growing up, that you loved about the other Star Wars movies, like the plot was simple. Like it wasn't anything too complicated, but you enjoyed the movie because of the characters in the movie. You know, you grew to love Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, all these people, Chewbacca. But when you're watching The Phantom Menace, you didn't love any characters. You weren't attached to any of the characters, and the storyline was dull and boring, and it just dragged. And you know, while you're watching the movie, you're saying to yourself, like, I didn't think there could be anybody more annoying in the universe than C-3PO. And then along came Jar Jar Binks. And you're like, my God. Like Jar Jar Binks literally was like, if they had to get like a human person to play Jar Jar Binks, it would have been Jim Carrey and Ace Ventura. It was like in all the other Star Wars movies, yeah, there was a little bit of humor here and there. It was mostly Han Solo was, smart ass, comments, sarcastic comments kind of thing. With Jar Jar Binks, it was just flat out, what's the word I'm looking for?
Junk.
Mr.
Let's just stick a pin in that, because I want to come back to that, because I think you're bringing up a couple of really, really good points. But first, Derek, I want to get your take. What the hell is the Phantom Menace? What does that mean?
Yeah, I have no idea. I like Again, Greg's take. Is the Phantom they're talking about the Emperor? Is it the premonition of what we, the audience, know is going to eventually become of Darth Vader? Like, I have no idea. I never understood what that title meant.
I know. I think that's, again, one of the fundamental flaws of the film. So I mentioned when I first went to see it, and I'm watching The Crawl, which I always loved in the first 3 Star Wars movies. It kind of sets up the story. It's kind of cool the way it's done. So I'm reading The Crawl in this one. I'm like, I have no idea what's going on here. This is just so convoluted. It goes back, Greg, what you were saying. The original Star Wars was pretty simple. It's a simple plot, So anyway, I'm going to read for you The Crawl from A Phantom Menace, okay? So it's turmoil has engulfed the Galactic Republic. The taxation of trade routes to outlying star systems is in dispute. Hoping to resolve the matter with a blockade of deadly battleships, the greedy Trade Federation has stopped all shipping to the small planet of Naboo. While the Congress of the Republic endlessly debates this alarming chain of events, the Supreme Chancellor has secretly dispatched 2 Jedi Knights, the guardians of peace and justice in the galaxy, to settle the conflict. ... What the hell does this even mean? Again, the thing is, I feel like people look back on this movie and are like, well, it's really for kids. If it's for kids, that Crawl is going to lose any kid right out of the get-go. Like, it makes no sense to me. So the episode 1 that I was expecting going into this film would have been a lot different. So I decided to put pen to paper, and I wrote my own Crawl for episode 1.
I thought you were going to say you wrote your own song.
Nope. Oh, yeah. No, I'll bust
all
out
those phantoms, all that menace. That's where I thought this was going.
No. Although that's a great idea. Maybe I'll have to bust one out for next week.
We're gonna turn it into the next Mervish Broadway musical.
Turn to the Phantom Menace, the musical.
We've got phantoms, and the menace. And don't forget Jar Jar.
Exactly. Everyone has AIDS. So the episode 1 that I was expecting, I put some thought to it. I thought, like, okay, what do I expect out of this movie? Or if I was going to make this movie, like, what should it entail? And so I wrote my own Crawl. So this is what it is, okay? There's a disturbance in the Force. The Jedi Order has detected a growing presence on the distant planet of Tatooine. Obi-Wan Kenobi has been dispatched to determine if this could be the chosen one of the Jedi prophecies. Meanwhile, the Galactic Republic is falling into turmoil, and dangerous elements are pursuing power and influence over the galaxy. A blockade of deadly battleships has moved into place around the small planet of Naboo. Queen Amidala has begun to amass allies in forming a rebellion against the evil Imperial Army, which has become a growing threat to freedom in the galaxy. ... That's the movie I was expecting.
That's way better.
Yeah.
That's way better, man.
That's the movie I was expecting.
That's the honest trailer version of The Crow.
Yeah. I don't know. So anyway, I thought that would be kind of cool to put that together. So hopefully that's better. And again, like I say, that's what I wanted to, the movie that I wanted to see and I didn't get a chance to see. But one thing I did want to talk about is style, because to me, Star Wars has always been so stylistic. Like when everything from the stormtroopers to Darth Vader, the Jawas, Sand People, Boba Fett, like all of it. And the one thing that sets Star Wars apart from all other science fiction up until 1977 when it came out was the look of it. You know, up until then, science fiction movies always had like guys in clean, shiny silver jumpsuits, you know, and the clean white UFOs. And I guess it always took place in the future. And then along comes Star Wars in 77. And it's not in the future. It's instead a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's in the past. And the Star Wars universe was dirty and grimy and it looked like it was lived in. You know, the droids are greasy and dirty. You could see oil and rivets on the Millennium Falcon. Sand People, they had like ripped clothes. And everything just looked like it had been around for ages. And that was one of the coolest things for me about Star Wars as a kid. And then along comes this movie, The Phantom Menace, and everything is shiny and clean and really colorful. So like I said originally when I watched the trailer, it didn't look like Star Wars. Does this movie even resemble Star Wars in any way for you guys? Because it just doesn't for me. It's a huge disconnect just in the style. Greg?
Yeah, no, I basically chalked it up after a while of just, it was just a different evolution of the Star Wars franchise. You know, like it was Star Wars, but you have to accept the fact that it was Star Wars going in a new direction, like another direction. It sort of was evolving from what we saw. But, you know, to your point, like, I remember how excited I was because they were talking about how they were starting production on the new Star Wars movie. And I was super excited to hear about that. And then like a month later, they came out and said, oh, well, you know, the acting portion of the production's been wrapped up. I'm like, what? Like, how the hell did you film a Star Wars movie with the actors in a month? You know, like that seems a little short to me. And that's when I started realizing I was going to start having a little bit of a panic because I was like, there's going to be too much emphasis put on special effects than putting it on, you know, character and story. They were going to favor it too heavy on special effects. Like when you watch the original Star Wars, like the Jedi and Empire and stuff, and New Hope, when you watch it, yeah, you know, we were blown away by the special effects in the 70s and early 80s because we didn't have that kind of stuff back then. But, you know, the emphasis wasn't really on the special effects. It was on the, you know, more so the characters and the story. Whereas when you watch Phantom Menace, I mean, you're talking about, you know, everything was shiny and what have you, which is very true. But at the same time, it was more effects driven, which was different than the first three. Like there was like, you know, like that whole pod race scene, which ran 18 minutes long, was nothing but special effects. You know, it was just a CGI mess, whereas the original had special effects that you enjoyed, but it didn't overshadow the whole movie. Like when you talked about the other Star Wars movies, the special effects were mentioned, but briefly.
They didn't waste screen time showing stuff off. It was just there to drive the story.
Yeah, exactly.
You're right.
Like,
you're right.
It was for like when you went in the 70s, that was something new. Like the idea of lasers and giant spaceships was a new concept. And so people were blown away by how awesome that was. But, you know, but when you talk to people about it, it wasn't all about the special effects, you know, and this one here, it was too much focus on special effects, CGI and things like that. And it really took away from the movie, I found.
Derek?
So one of the things that became very apparent to me in the moment, and especially afterwards, was I think a lot of the decisions that were made about how this movie came together, how it looked and what the story was like, was all about the driving of dollars and cents. Lucas had made so much money off the merchandising up until that point. He knew that if he put tons of characters in shiny outfits with tons of spaceships and pod racers and everything else, he could sell a ton of toys. Because I remember learning years later that with a movie like Star Wars, you can't have any. Well, they chose not to put out any toys of anything that didn't actually appear in the movie. Once you've gone through your story and realized we've only shown 50 characters from the start to the end, that's it. You can only sell 50 action figures. But, in 1999, he's going to make a longer movie in more locations with more characters where they're in different costumes and outfits with different droids and different vehicles. To me, it was a 2-hour commercial for all the possible toys that were going to come out of it. And let me tell you, man, oh man, were there toys that came out of it. And they mass produced them in such quantities. And it was a huge fiasco. I mean, they still made a ton of money on them. But, I think they were really banking on, number one, little kids wanting to play with this stuff. But when the movie's not great, the kids aren't as interested. And I remember sort of echoing what Greg said. Like when I was a little kid, I had all the Star Wars toys and I loved playing with them and making up my own stories and adventures and what could they do. But I didn't have 200 characters to choose from. I had like my 4 or 5 favorites that were every time something happened, it's Luke and Han and Chewie and away you go, and the droids and Princess Leia, and that's it. And you had them going on adventures. But where a movie like this, it's like you have so many characters, it's hard for kids to latch on to any of them. And the movie itself didn't really give you a strong emotional tie to any of them. That it was hard to sort of make that connection. And I think again, that was a failing of the movie for the fans in that, it was clearly just a 2-hour commercial. And the more I watch it, and I thought that this time around too, when I watched it this week, it's just like, man, oh man, you can really see there were scenes that were completely unnecessary with characters that added nothing to the story, but were simply there to sell product.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like the one thing is like you just talked about it. Like when we were growing up, they sold Star Wars to us with all the toys and the action figures and everything. And we bought it up in droves. But, to come up to the new recent ones, like the last 3 that came out, they were expecting the same thing again. They were hoping that young kids would eat it up and buy the toys and the action figures and stuff. And the kids, like I tried to get my kids into it and they just don't bite. They're not into it. But you talk to my youngest kid and she treats the Harry Potter franchise the way we treated the Star Wars franchise.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the problem is that we forget that, when we were growing up, my dad tried to get me into the stuff that, he was into, like, oh, hey, we should watch Westworld and Clint Eastwood movies. And I was like, these are terrible. But, when I got older, I realized I was just being a little kid and, I was going in with an open mind. But I was like, my dad would be like, no, these were really cool. These were like Westworld was our Star Wars. I'm like, well, okay, whatever. And
you got to watch Gunsmoke, man. Come on.
Gunsmoke, Bonanza. So, but now, like, I tried to get my kids into Star Wars and they just wouldn't bite. They weren't interested. But my youngest, her whole room is decorated with Harry Potter. She's got Harry Potter Funko Pop. She's got Harry Potter T-shirts, all the wands. We took them to Universal Studios to do the Harry Potter experience thing. And I realized, I was like, you know what? We can't try and sell our nostalgia on our kids. They're going to have their own thing. And I think that was what the problem was with Phantom Menace as well, was that the younger kids who were, say, 9 or 10 or whatever age when Star Wars came out for us, like 7 or 8 or whatever, they weren't into that. They were into whatever the new thing was. I think at that time it was Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was the big thing. And that's the problem, is that we tried to push the franchise on a younger audience that they just weren't interested in it.
Well, who knows? It might have worked if the movie didn't suck. If the movie was good, that too. maybe they would have taken up because my kids have watched the original trilogy and they like it. They think it's great. So I don't know, man. So I was mentioning a little bit about the style of Star Wars and how the Phantom Menace just doesn't hold up with the style. I don't think, like the battle droids, for example, they look like ducks. Like they're not even cool. Like they're just dumb. And like, so you mentioned Jar Jar Binks. I will never forget. There was this documentary once where George Lucas is like, he's talking to the crew, right? And he's like, oh, Jar Jar Binks is funny. I don't really think George Lucas has much of a grasp on humor. Like you mentioned, Greg, Harrison Ford pulled humor out of the scripts in the original trilogy. Mostly, I think, because of his delivery And in some cases, he improvised some of his lines. But, because of him, I think specifically, some humorous moments got into the original trilogy. And then I guess, I don't know, Lucas all of a sudden thinks he knows humor, and we end up with Jar Jar Binks. It's just stupid. And another thing that came to mind with the style was this idea of the midichlorians. Like, I thought the Force was supposed to be like a religion. It's not made up of like scientific stuff in your blood. It basically makes the Force Scientology. Don't they believe you have these like thetan things in your blood? It's like Anakin is basically like the Tom Cruise of the Force. It's dumb. I don't know. That was my take on it. So speaking of the style, let's talk a little bit about the CGI. Mm-hmm. So Lucas basically goes from the genius of Industrial Light and Magic, doing the greatest practical special effects of all time, to here where he uses CGI for everything. And it looks like crap. And the argument that I've always heard is that, CGI was in its infancy. That's why it looks bad. But I disagree with that, because Jurassic Park came out in 93 and it looks amazing. The Abyss was in 1989. It looked good. T2 Judgment Day was 92? And that melting metal cop was way better than this crap. When they're walking into town, into Tatooine, it looked like the special edition crap. It was just garbage.
I agree. It felt to me like it was completely rushed. Like it almost felt like at times it felt like a student film project that had to be put in by the deadline.
Which is so bizarre, because they had like, how many years did they have? They had 20 years to make this thing or whatever it was, So bizarre. Derek, what's your take on the CGI in this film? I mean, obviously bad, but
I'm sort of hot and cold on it. Like I think that for some of the things that he was trying to do, you needed to do them with a computer. It was the way to, like, when they tried to show like the large droid armies and stuff, and some of the outer space stuff with the ships.
Fine.
I think from a dollars and cents point of view, at the time, you weren't going to do those with miniatures. It just wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to work for the budget.
They used to do it with matte paintings, and I get that stuff. You're doing that with CGI. I'm on board with you.
Yeah, but again, I think that the more creatures, the more aliens, the more vehicles and things like that he could jam in there using special effects, potentially the more toys they could make. I think it all came back to dollars and cents. I think it was, all these things that he felt he could show off with. And Chris, you mentioned it earlier, and I'd heard this as well, that one of the reasons that everyone loved the original trilogy so much, that Lucas got praised for, was he wasn't telling a story about the setting. He was telling a story about the characters, and the setting was just there, as dressing behind the scenes to lend that validity, to make you believe more about what these characters were doing and where they were doing it. This movie seemed to be the opposite. It was, look at all these cool things I can do with my computer. Here, let me show you this. Let me show you this. Let me show you this. It's like, we didn't need any of that. It's not relevant. It either was not relevant to the story. It added layers to the story that didn't move the plot forward. It made things more complicated and convoluted than they needed to be. Yeah, no, I think there could have been a really good special effects movie made using some of this stuff, but I think that the resources were put in the wrong places.
Yeah, I agree. Like, it should have been more focused on the characters, and maybe even having like decent actors come in to play the parts. And speaking of that, with the cast, like, what the hell are Liam Neeson, Ewan McGregor, and Samuel L. Jackson doing in Star Wars? Like, the whole thing with Star Wars, for me, one of the things that made it really work was they used unknown actors, not movie stars. And even the known actors that were cast, like Alec Guinness and Peter Cushing, they weren't famous movie stars. They were just really, really good actors, One example here where I thought they got it right was Terrence Stamp. I thought he was well cast because, he's just like not a really well-known actor, but he's a very good actor. But Liam Neeson and Ewan McGregor and Samuel L. Jackson, like, they're bona fide movie stars. So I think the casting in this movie is completely misguided. Like, I don't know. That was my thought. What do you guys think about, Ewan McGregor and Liam Neeson and Samuel L. Jackson? Derek, what's your take on it?
I mean, I think they're all good performers. I just think that, you can only do so much with what you're given. And I think that in 99, it was still a time where performers were learning how to work with special effects. Like now you put an actor in a Marvel movie against a green screen and you describe like, okay, this is what's been going to be going on here. And they're they're better equipped as a performer to understand how to act against nothing. And imagine we're going to put in these special effects where this is going to happen. So act like this is happening. I think in today's day and age, that's just the normal for professional actors. I think in 99, it was still relatively new concept. So you had these performers who have proven that they are great performers, and you put them in situations where there's just so much special effects that I think they were just lost. They didn't know what to do, and it's hard to get their best work out of them when they're probably doubting themselves, going like, okay, what's going to be over here in post? Okay, and I'm going to react how? Okay, and now I'm supposed to act? Yeah, sure, let's do it. But yeah, I don't think any of these performers gave us their best, but clearly they have talent. Like they've all been recognized for other bodies of work. I mean, Liam Neeson years earlier was nominated for Schindler's List, and Natalie Portman ended up winning an Oscar for Black Swan. So I mean, these actors have the chops. They've been nominated for stuff. Like they've done critical pieces. So yeah, it was kind of hard to watch some of these performers in this movie. And like the young kid, Jake Lloyd, not to crap on the kid, because he's just
before we get into Jake Lloyd, I just want to just make a point, because I'm going to go back to Jurassic Park in '93. The scene where Sam Neill and Laura Dern first see the dinosaurs, like they're interacting, they're acting their off, and like they're seeing dinosaurs for the first time. So like they did it. I don't know. I think it can be done. It could be done before this movie. They just didn't do it here. So anyway, Jake Lloyd, on to him. I don't want to slag that kid, but
I know he took a lot of crap over the years from a lot of fans, and I'm not here to pile on. I think again, it's a young actor with limited experience who is doing the best he can with the direction that he's been given by the director. But I think the delivery of a lot of his lines, it's just like, oh my God, it's so clear that it's a kid reading a line and not even trying to, emote in a way that, especially anytime the kid was supposed to be excited or happy, it just felt like he was reading line. Oh, yay. Hey, yippee, skippy. It's like, I didn't believe it for a second. Again, I'm not here to crap on the kid. I think the kid did what the director told him to do. And he's obviously
he's like a kid taking a role in a Star Wars movie. He's like, it's not his fault they got it wrong, right?
It's it reminds me of that scene in Cheers when Woody's trying to do the thing, I love you, Emily, and they're like, no, it's not like that, and he's like, I love you, Emily, and then they're like, finally they just say to him, you're gonna lose this thing, and then he's like, I love you, Emily, and it's like it's more natural, and it just felt like this. In this movie, this young kid, it really felt stunted the way he delivered a lot of these lines. Again, I'm not crapping on the kid. I'm positive the kid just did what the director told him to do. Credit to him for following direction. I think the direction was bad. I think the script was bad. I think he was asked to do things, and you get the best you can with what you got. So,
Greg, any comments on Jake Lloyd?
Yeah, I'm with Derek. I don't want to crap on the kid. Kind of thing. Like I've read online where he went into a very like spiral of bad depression from people stopping him in the streets and at conventions and stuff and just crapping on him. So not really fair to him, but it's always risky when you have kids in a movie because as Derek said, my youngest, she does acting and she's kind of the same way. She's more concerned on focusing on memorizing her line than just delivering it with emotion. But again, my kid's 10, and so again, this was a young kid that was just reading his lines and you could tell. It's unfortunate that that's the choice they went with. I mean, you brought up Jurassic Park just recently, and I thought the young boy in Jurassic Park, I don't know his name offhand, but the young boy in Jurassic Park would have maybe been a better choice for Anakin Skywalker than this guy. He would have been a better choice, but no, Jake Lloyd didn't do it for me. I thought he kind of really brought the movie down. But I what's his name? Ewan McGregor.
Hold on, with Jake Lloyd, I just want to mention something because I don't think it was the actor. I think the problem was his age. I think in this film, Anakin should have been a teenager. He should have been this cocky little punk rebel. He should have been James Dean in Rebel Without a Cause. That's who Anakin Skywalker should have been. It would have made his interactions with Amidala better, I think, because you could totally believe she'd fall for the bad boy. Even a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, girls dig the bad boy, you know? It would have made his whole character make more sense. None of this yippee crap, like Derek mentioned. You know, they don't...
When you were watching this, we knew where it was going. And then we saw Hayden Christensen take over for the other two movies. But when you're watching this one, did you not feel a little bit like creepy, icky when towards the end of the movie she was kind of being a little like they're like, all right, we need you to be a little more flirty, a little more making googly eyes at Anakin when it was obvious that the kid was 8.
Yeah, that's why he should have been older.
It was odd.
He should have been that older punk.
It gave
punk
me like
guy.
that feeling of like, wow, this is really inappropriate. Like she's obviously not like Natalie Portman made me feel really old in that movie to realize how young she was when that came out. But at the same time, she was definitely a lot older than this kid, and you could tell they're like, all right, well, we got to start hinting at, in the next movie they start developing romantic feelings. So I need you to be a little more flirtatious and googly-eyed with this 8-year-old kid. I was like, damn, man, like it made me feel like kind of icky watching that part.
Greg, let me ask you this: what if the genders had been reversed? What if it like that? Yeah. You think it's ick the way it is now? Like if the genders had been reversed, there's no way that would have passed anything. Like that would have been
absolutely not. Like you go back to Natalie Portman in The Professional. It was the same way. Mm-hmm. Like Natalie Portman in The Professional was like what, 12, and they tried to sexualize Natalie Portman at 12 in The Professional, and that felt like highly inappropriate and icky. So, but yeah, that whole, like, I understand where they had to sort of give you the foreshadowing of, okay, well, this is going to develop into a romantic relationship.
Yeah, then just make his character older. Like, it's so simple.
Make his character older.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the other thing was they don't even set him up as this child with the power of the Force at all. At one point, Liam Neeson says, the Force is strong with him. The boy sees things before they happen. I'm like, what? When did he do that? There's nothing that happens to indicate that. It's like they edited some scenes out and left that line in. Like, it didn't make any sense. I don't know. So I just feel like that he was just, again, not the actor's fault. It's, the director and the script and everything. Like, it was wrong. Liam Neeson just came to mind about him too. I feel like he shouldn't have even been in this movie. Or let me rephrase that. Qui-Gon Jinn should have never been in this movie. They should have just had Obi-Wan Kenobi go down to the planet on his own, just like in My Crawl. And Liam Neeson was a totally unnecessary character. Other than maybe they want him to die like Ben did in the original. Like,
I think that's what it was there for. It was just to give us a sense of give us an idea of where Obi-Wan Ben Kenobi came from and how he learned from him, and now he was going to bestow his knowledge onto Anakin and then Luke later on in the films. I think that was the purpose of why he was there.
Just have him get it directly from Yoda. Because that was at the end of Return of the Jedi in the forest, the ghost, we don't see Qui-Gon Jinn. He's not part of the equation. Why put him in there? It was like Yoda gives it down to Ben, who gives it down to Anakin. And that's it. The three of them are in the forest. He doesn't even belong in this movie. Just cut him out. That's what I think.
But with Ewan McGregor, like, I didn't care for his Ben Kenobi role in this version. But the two movies that preceded it, I thought he became a much better Ben Kenobi in Attack of the Clones and in Phantom Menace. And I thought he was really good as Ben Kenobi in the TV series Obi-Wan.
I haven't seen that, but I will say the third one of these prequels, the Revenge of the Sith, I thought he was stronger in that one.
Yeah, he grew. Like, he grew as a Ben Kenobi. Like, and the other two movies, you got more of a sense of, okay, I can see more of a Ben Kenobi feel in this. Whereas this one here, I didn't really get that wise Obi-Wan feeling. But again, he was young, and maybe it was after the death of his trainer that he realized, okay, that's when he realized he needed to step up his game. But in this one, I didn't really get that Obi-Wan feel that you get in the other two.
Oh, another thing I want to mention in the cast before we move on is I want to give a shout out to Brian Blessed. So remember Boss Nass? That stupid character. He's like a frog that like spits.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
so the guy that did the voice for that was Prince.
Jar Jar's boss.
Yeah, he was Prince Vultan in Flash Gordon. Remember the guy with the big wings coming out of his back and the beard?
Yes.
That was the guy who did the voice of that. So.
Oh, okay, good.
Anyway.
All right. Oh, didn't know
okay, so we've been crapping on this movie because but I want to just turn things around for a second. It's not all bad. Like there are some good parts of this movie, right? Like,
yes.
Derek, start us off then. What's a good part of this movie?
All right. So I think the absolute best thing about this movie is the soundtrack. I think that it was a fantastic new piece of score that added to the Star Wars musical universe while still drawing on the parts of the score from the trilogy we know, but adding enough new stuff like the Duel of the Fates piece that is like sort of the centerpiece of this movie that happens at the end. I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought that was one of the things I remember when I first saw it that I felt really helped the movie was I thought the score was great. Even though the movie wasn't, I thought the music helped it so much. And I really felt that way when I watched it again this week. I was reminded at how good the score was for this movie.
So I'm going to disagree because I thought other than the opening theme over the crawl, that's the Star Wars theme, the score was really different from Star Wars. But I felt like it shouldn't have differed all that much. It should have been kind of this, like, why not use the same score? So would you say it was the duel of the...
I think it's called Duel of the Fates, if I remember correctly.
Where does that come in? Is that when they're the lightsaber battle?
Yeah, it's like the last 10, 15 minutes is when you're really... I mean, it's throughout the movie, but that's when it's really picks up.
Because to me...
the choir, the background.
Yeah, that lightsaber battle was like this operatic religious music going on.
Yeah, that's the one.
No, what the hell is that? That's not Star Wars. It didn't sound like Star Wars at all. So I don't know. I disagree.
But I think for me, it needed to separate itself from the original trilogy to sort of set the tone that we're doing 3 new movies. They're Star Wars in name, but they got their own feel. And I think that's what I really liked about it was reminiscent enough that I still knew it was Star Wars, but it was different enough that I was not confusing it with the original trilogy score.
I guess maybe I'm more of the mindset that if you're going to do, another trilogy of these prequels, make it closer to the original ones. Try not to depart it too much. I don't know. That was my thought. Anything else that you thought was good in there? Oh, Greg, you got something good from this movie?
I like the character of Darth Maul. I thought the Darth Maul character was a highlight for me. In typical George Lucas fashion, you fall in love with not a major character, but you fall in love with a smaller character, and then they're dead like 10 minutes later. So Darth Maul, spoiler alert if you haven't seen it, doesn't make it. But then you go back and you think about it. Everybody loved Boba Fett. Guy died 20 minutes into Jedi. Mm-hmm. Everybody loved Yoda. He died 30 minutes into Jedi. Like, it was just one of those things where you're like, you just start liking a character, and then all of a sudden George Lucas finds a way to kill him off. But I thought Darth Maul and that whole sequence of the lightsaber battle was actually probably the highlight of the movie for me. I thought that was really well done. I thought Ray Park, that's his forte, but I thought Ray Park did a really good job as Darth Maul.
I'll go with the pod.
I agree.
I'll go with the pod race for me because
really?
Yeah, that was my number 2.
Overall, I thought it was a good idea. I thought it was a good concept. I agree with you, Greg. It was not great in the execution. And again, it
tacked on, man.
But the
18 minutes, man.
Yeah, but the whole thing, the good thing about it for me was it harkens back to one of Lucas's strengths from the original trilogy, and that's where he's like using motion through the frame and high speeds. Like you had the trench battle in the original, the speeder bikes through the trees, the snow speeders on Hoth. So the element of speed was good. The concept was good. That idea was good. But there was lots of it that I didn't like. You're right. I thought it was too long. I also didn't like Greg Proops. His voice.
Oh, Greg Proops is the announcer. Yeah.
Yeah. His voice is so unique. It just stands out. It was very distracting to me. And I like Whose Line Is It Anyway, as I mentioned earlier. And the animation that he was in, where it's like that 2-headed announcer, it looked like hand-drawn animation. Like, I don't know. And the scene where there's like the broken rolling engine, it's like rolling over as the pod racers crashed. That's kind of cool, but did we need to see it happen over and over and over again? I'm like, okay, enough's enough here. Again, Less is more. That's the best thing about the Star Wars special effects. Less is more. I also didn't like Jabba in it.
Yeah, see, that was what I was going to comment on. George Lucas, he doesn't like he gets mad at fanboys, like Star Wars fanboys, when they're critical of like certain things he does. And you remember everybody was super critical about the Jabba CGI that they brought out on like the re-release of the Star Wars
special edition. Oh God,
special
that was
edition
bad.
Stuff. I purposely believe there was no need for Jabba to be in that scene and in that movie, and he purposely put him in there just to say, you know what, here you go, fanboys, here's that Jabba you don't like.
Yep.
Like, I honestly feel he tacked him in there because he did the same thing with Jar Jar, because everybody complained about Jar Jar in the first movie, how terrible he was and how he ruined it. So he had to really take him out of the next two, because otherwise nobody would want to go see it. But did you notice how he always found a way to somehow sneak Jar Jar in the other two movies? He does it, like, I literally think, as much as George Lucas loves taking money from fanboys, he also loves being like, you know what, up yours, here's Jabba the CGI you don't like.
Everything involving Jar Jar in the pod race scene was bad. All of it. And the other one that got me too was that Sebulba was basically this cartoonish, like mustachio twirling villain from some black and white film from the 30s. I also thought the Warwick Davis cameo was dumb. I did not like that. And the whole thing was too colorful. Again, I feel like that whole scene needed a bit more edginess to it. It needed that sort of talented actor to play like the brooding teenager, not a cute kid driving the thing. It needed to be like, again, Rebel Without a Cause. That's what it needed to be. Rebel Without a Cause in space. That's what I thought. But one of my favorite things that was in that scene, the sand people taking pot shots at the racers from the top of the hills, might have been my favorite part of the whole movie. I don't know what it was about that. I loved it. I thought it was great. I don't know. It harkened back to the original Star Wars. It looked like the original Star Wars. And the fact that they're just up there just shooting at pod racers going by, I'm like, that is friggin' cool. So that was there. So I want to ask you guys. Yes.
Sorry, I want to just throw in a hot take because it's sort of related to what you'd like. So I want to talk about Jar Jar for a second.
Okay.
So everybody who's always asked about this movie, what don't you like? The first thing everyone always says is Jar Jar Binks is terrible. And I'm not here to dispute that. However, upon this viewing, I realized what it is that I disliked about Jar Jar, which I think is probably pretty common. And it's the voice and the delivery of the lines. Mm-hmm. And I thought to myself, what if all the lines that Jar Jar speaks are erased, the audio is erased and is re-recorded in a more normalized voice, but you have when I was watching it this time through, I was like, what if Jar Jar is just supposed to have a childlike intelligence? Like they certainly make it seem like these characters, what are they? The Gungans, I think they're called, are less intelligent than the other characters. But they have technology, so they're obviously not idiots. But it just seemed like they were supposed to be a little, dumber. And I think that was done for laughs, which is not cool. But what if you had someone re-record Jar Jar's lines in a childlike voice, but in a way that's more calm and regular, and not just all with this weird, screaming and yelling for no reason and mispronouncing words. And I just kept thinking to myself, I think my opinion of this movie would go up considerably if that had happened. And I mean, in the world of internet and AI, I'm sure such a cut exists, and I kind of want to see it. I kind of think I would like this movie a lot more if that was the case.
Nah, not for me. For me, the part. I mean, yeah, obviously the voice was annoying as anything, but for me, Jar Jar, what made me like every time I just closed my eyes and shook my head and let out a loud sigh, it was the slapstick comedy. It was the slapstick comedy that drove me nuts with Jar Jar.
Trying to grab the apple with his tongue and then putting his tongue in between the pod racers, and I think you're right. It was slapstick.
And when he's running away from the boulder and the fight sequence.
Yes.
Like for me, that was like it felt like when you used to watch Benny Hill skits at the end of the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt like a Benny Hill skit. Like it was too slapstick for me, and I'm like, there's a time and a place for slapstick comedy, but the Star Wars universe is just not the place. So yeah, as much as annoying as the voice was, I think for me, the big turn off for me on Jar Jar was just the slapstick humor.
I want to talk a little bit about this idea of the mythology of Star Wars, because I know some people, and I have friends that love the whole mythology, behind it. I don't care about the backstories of the Jedi Knights and the mythology of them and the Force and all that stuff. You know why I love Star Wars? Because it's a lot of fun to watch. Like, it's a great story about a rescue and good guys versus bad guys and spaceships and weird creatures. It's stylistic and it's a hell of a lot of fun to watch. But this movie is not fun. Like, it's obsessed with telling you this boring backstory that doesn't matter. It does not matter. Like, and the thing for me, and I've mentioned this before, Derek, Star Wars is Luke Skywalker's story for me. The original trilogy isn't about Darth Vader's redemption. It's not. It's about Luke's forgiveness. Return of the Jedi is about forgiveness. It's about good and virtue and forgiveness. And it all happens in this rip-roaring good time with these spaceships and battles and cool stuff going on. I don't care where Darth Vader came from. I don't give a crap who Anakin Skywalker is. And as you mentioned, Greg, the original movie focused on three things: action, pace, and plot. And it used great characters to motivate the story. This movie doesn't do that at all. Do you guys care at all about the mythology of Star Wars? Derek, we'll start with you.
No, not at all. I mean, if it's there and then you can follow it, great, if it's going to help. But no, I think that too much time and effort's put into trying explaining things that don't need to be explained. It's like in comic books. Wolverine was the most popular character in the 80s, largely because we didn't know anything about his background. And then in the 90s, they're like, let's try and tell you Wolverine's backstory. And it just made the character less interesting. And I think that Star Wars did the same thing. They tried to explain all these things that you never needed to have explained. Not knowing was more fun than knowing. And now that I know, I don't like what I know.
Yeah, I agree. Greg?
Yeah, I don't mind a little bit of a backstory to try and help us understand the character a bit better, but at the same time, I don't need a deep dive into how things came about and things like that. There are dedicated Star Wars fans that know every minute detail about the galaxy and the characters and the storylines and everything. And then there's, for me, I'm a fan. I will say I'm a Star Wars fan and I do love Star Wars, but I don't feel the need to deep dive into it to enjoy it on a different level than other fans do. I just want to sit down, have some popcorn, and enjoy a good movie.
I feel like I got to mention Yoda, and I want to know, why was he CGI'd? Like, one of the single biggest accomplishments of The Empire Strikes Back was being able to take this little puppet and make him the oldest, wisest Jedi master, and it was this perfect mix of Frank Oz's vocals and his, he's a master of puppetry, and his interactions with Mark Hamill. Like, it was real. Here, Yoda looks dumb. And the other thing is, he looks different. And I'm like, why? I went online and they're like, well, he was younger. This is like 30 years before the original trilogy. What was Yoda, like 900? So what's that? That's like, what, 3 years? He looked the same. He looked exactly the same. So I did not like Yoda in this. Derek, what do you think?
Yeah, honestly, I've never been a big fan of the Yoda character, even in Empire.
Oh, really?
So seeing him in computer generated, I certainly felt that he looked worse being computer generated, especially in the part 2 and part 3, where they have him walking around and using lightsabers. I'm like,
he's like bouncing around in some of the other ones.
Dumb. They're just trying to sell more Yoda toys. Not interested. Didn't feel it added anything. Again, I like the mystery of he's at the end of his lifespan. You meet him and he is in his twilight years. He is on the way out, literally on the way out the door. He's about to die. He's going to impart his wisdom to this young student, the next generation. He's passing the torch. And then we get this movie and it's like, who cares? Like, yeah.
The Yoda could not even have been in this movie. You wouldn't even needed him there, I think.
Yeah, exactly. You got Sam Jackson, put him in charge.
Yeah.
You're going to create a new character. Give the new character something to do.
For me, my entire bedroom has about 18 different Yoda dolls and action figures. I got a Yoda bathrobe, 5 Yoda t-shirts. My keychain's a Yoda Lego, actually, like a figurine.
Safe to say you're a Yoda fan.
My girlfriend constantly wants me to get a Yoda tattoo. I absolutely love the character of Yoda. He's my favorite character in all of Star Wars. But I just accepted, like, I'm with you. The CGI of Yoda was terrible in these movies. But the thing was, I just accepted that we had moved on from using puppets as an effect, and we were now in a CGI world where puppets weren't going to be a thing anymore. It's just easier and more economically cheaper, I guess, to CGI Yoda than to have somebody constantly move the puppet around and have to do different takes because the puppet's arm or mouth didn't move at the right time. And that I accepted that's what it was. But as a character goes, Yoda's my favorite character in the entire Star Wars universe. So
I felt that it's almost like they try to tie too much together. So let me explain this. Like, I felt it was a major flaw in the original trilogy as well. Trying to, like, tie everything together. Like, you've got Luke as this farm boy who joins the rebellion and fights against the bad guys. Cool. Done. No, now we got to make Vader his dad. And then we got to make Leia his sister. I'm like, come on. And then in the Phantom Menace, you've got Anakin building C-3PO. I mean, really? I mean, Lucas has created this big, sprawling universe. What was the planet? Coruscant? Remember, the entire planet is like one giant city. It's like huge. This universe is massive. Why would you make everybody connected here? Especially have an Anakin build 3PO. Like, it feels like it shrinks the universe. You know what I mean? Like, that's something that stuck out to me. So I thought that was dumb. Like, and then,
I found it weird now that we know that Anakin built C-3PO. How come they didn't really play on that in the other movies that Darth Vader knew C-3PO?
I guess maybe because Darth Vader was, had the mask and everything. So maybe C-3PO didn't recognize him or something. But yeah, it's just dumb. It's like, let's just put this in there to make this universe even smaller. And I don't know, it was weird. I also want to mention, going back to Yoda for a second, that the Jedi Council. So they bring Anakin at the end of the movie before the Jedi Council so they can test him to see if he's got the power of the Force, which of course has not been shown in the movie at all up until this point. And so what's the test they give him? Samuel L. Jackson basically has an iPad with pictures on it, and Anakin has to guess what they are. It's like the opening scene in Ghostbusters. Remember where Jennifer Runyon guesses wrong and Bill Murray tells her she's right because she's hot? That's what it reminded me of. It's like I expected Anakin to be like, it's a couple of wavy lines. And Samuel L. Jackson goes, I'm sorry, this just isn't your lucky day, and shocks him, But, and then again, in that scene, Ewan McGregor says, the boy is dangerous. Everyone can see it. Why can't you? I'm like, when did they say he was dangerous? At what point was this kid dangerous? Again, it feels like something got lost in the editing here. Was it just me?
No, I think it was just. I think they realized it was coming towards the end of the movie, and they're like, we got to foreshadow where this story is going. So we got to find a way to sneak it in. We won't make a big deal out of it in this episode, but in future episodes we'll make a bigger deal out of it. So for now, we're just we're going to foreshadow that this is the direction it's going in.
I think the thing for me is, like, this movie is boring. And you know what? Star Wars was never boring. So I think that's one of the things that sort of sticks in me. Why not have the pod race be like the climax of the film? Go with the setup that I mentioned in my version of The Crawl. Ben Kenobi goes down to Tatooine to check out this disturbance in the Force. And Anakin is just like teeming with the power of the Force, So Kenobi sees it, he senses it, and he's like, oh, you know what? I can tame it. He's like pig vomit and private parts. Remember that? He's like, I can tame this guy. He's got to be like, and he's going to train Anakin and make sure he like channels his power for good. But then he has a pod race, and it'd be cool if he like cheated in it somehow by using the Force for bad, but like no one catches it. Just the audience knows, and it foreshadows what to come. I just think there was just so much more that could have been done with this movie. I don't know. Oh, another part too that burned me was at the end, literally, there's a pun. When Liam Neeson dies and they light him on fire and they burn his body right in front of everybody. Again, I feel like they're trying to tie it into like Return of the Jedi. Remember when Darth Vader was inside his armor suit? But he was inside his suit. Liam Neeson's body is totally exposed. I cannot believe that would not smell like you would have people barfing. Like they're all just standing there like it's a barbecue. Come on. I don't know. That scene, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I don't know. Maybe I'm nitpicking too much.
You're taking a bit too much of a deep dive there on
I
guess.
One, I don't know. That scene, I was like, what the hell? This doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know.
I get you though.
I don't know. It's just not a Star Wars movie. It doesn't look like a Star Wars movie. It's not paced like a Star Wars movie. It doesn't have the style or the sensibility of a Star Wars movie. One of the best things Lucas did, I think, was he stepped away from the director's chair for the 2 sequels in the original trilogy. He should have learned his lesson. Like, what he should have done was just leave good enough alone and never made the prequels. But that's just my opinion. I'm a grumpy old man. What can I say?
Well, when I watched it this time around, I realized in my head, like, Metallica fans, when we discuss Metallica albums, there's always an argument as to which Metallica album is the best one. Is it Master of Puppets? Is it Ride the Lightning, right? And, the correct answer is Master of Puppets. But the reality is, like, there's always going to be the Master of Puppets crowd. There's always going to be the Ride the Lightning crowd. But we always argue as to which one's the better one. But no matter who you talk to that's a Metallica fan, and they list and order all the albums that, from best to worst, in unison, you'll never get an argument. Everyone will say Saint Anger is the worst Metallica album that was ever made, no doubt. Phantom Menace is the Saint Anger of the Star Wars franchise.
But that being said, I agree with you. But that being said, do you think this movie was influential in any way? Because Lucas was trying to change the way movies were made when he made this movie. So do you think it was influential at all, Derek?
No.
I think more as a cautionary tale of if you give someone an unlimited budget and a tremendous amount of hubris, and you give them the keys to the kingdom, and they're going to do what they want, you're not always going to get the masterpiece that you might expect.
Greg, influential?
If it's influential, I don't think it's influential in any way. If it's influential, it was influential for people to say, this is not how I want to make my movie.
Especially when it comes to CGI, I think I agree with you. But it certainly didn't stop other, franchises from doing these origin stories. Is this one of the first origin story movies, you think?
Like a prequel, you mean?
Yeah, like the idea, hey, let's go back and look at where these characters came from, and let's look into this, because that seems to be a big thing, I think, is it like in the Marvel universe, they do a lot of that stuff? You think that all came from here in any way, or this was influenced by Phantom Menace?
Well, I mean, the comic book stuff doesn't usually go back like that. But I do think that other movies do it. Again, it's a way
the idea of the origin story is a thing, right?
Well, and they can do it because they can sell you a franchise you're familiar with and hire new, younger actors and not have to pay the ones that you recognize. So, of course, they're going to do it. It's a formula that works. They make tons of money doing it.
Dumb, though. It's like, okay, let's go back 30 years and find out what makes the shark in Jaws want to, eat people. What's his motive? It's so stupid. I don't know.
I'd pay to see that. No.
I'm sure that you would. Okay, do we want to rate this 1 out of 10? This should be fun. Derek, kick us off. What are you going to give it as a rating?
2.
2 out of 10. Okay, Greg?
1.
Okay, I think I would give it a 2 as well. This is the lowest rated film that we have ever done on the podcast, and I nominated it. What the hell was I thinking? Oh my God. All right, well, gentlemen, that's it. That's the Phantom Menace. Didn't hold up after 25 years any better than when it first came out, I guess, but we did have to get our say in. So what do you say we do this?
Fun with Caveman.
All right, guys. I mentioned at the top of the show how I love watching Whose Line Is It Anyway? So in the spirit of that show, I'm going to put both you guys to the test. So you're going to do some improv with me tonight. Okay?
Oh, boy.
So one of my absolute favorite improv games that they do on that show, and they still do it now, is Scenes from a Hat. So if you're not familiar with it, this is kind of how it works. They give you a topic, and you have to try and come up with as many examples as possible for that topic. And instead of doing multiple things, we're just going to do one topic. And our topic for tonight is, guys, you have to describe your sex life. But here's the hitch. You've got to use a Star Wars quote. So any quote at all from the Star Wars movies, and you guys are huge Star Wars fans, so you're going to nail this one. Okay? So you got to describe your sex life using a Star Wars quote, Go, Greg.
You came in that thing?
You're braver than I thought.
I recognized your foul stench when I was brought on board.
Oh, man. It didn't go in. It just impacted on the surface.
It's possible he came in through the south entrance.
You don't need to see his identification.
Oh, jeez.
I thought they smelled bad on the outside. That's no moon.
Sorry about the mess.
Let's blow this thing and go home.
Great kid, don't get cocky. Myself, the boy, 2 droids, and no questions. All right, so we did it. We did some improv. It was not bad.
Oh, my God.
Okay, great job, guys. Greg, want to thank you for joining us and all this silliness. It's always great to have you on. You're going to come back sometime, right?
Absolutely, man. Anytime, any topic. I am here.
Awesome. So next time out, we're going to do another movie from 1999. Derek, it's over to you. What movie are we going to watch and review next time we come back?
We're going to do one of my all-time favorite movies, and we're going to go visit Fight Club.
Oh, okay. Very good.
I was going to say The Matrix, but you and Yancey already reviewed The Matrix, so we'll go with my second favorite movie from 1999. We're going to go with Fight Club.
I have never seen Fight Club. So this
really?
Should be, yeah, this should be interesting.
Have you read the book? Any chance
Nope.
you read the book?
Nope.
Oh, my God.
Nope.
Okay.
So I'll be coming into it fresh 25 years after the fact, but, that's kind of the way I do things. All right, so that's what we're going to do. We're going to come back. We're going to watch Fight Club from 1999. We're going to come back next time. We're going to review it. And until then, I'm Chris McBrien. On behalf of myself and Derek Myers, I want to say thanks, Greg Martin, for joining us again. And on behalf also of our producer, Sloth, we want to say, everybody, thank you very much for taking the time to listen to Pop Goes Your World, the pop culture podcast for the generations.
Thanks for listening to Pop Goes Your World. You can contact Chris and Derek at popgoesyourworld.com. Please take a minute and review the podcast on iTunes or wherever you download and listen to the show.